Hello guys and gals, and welcome. Welcome. So, it's been about like, I don't know, like 4 days of me playing this game. And, I think I'm already ready to give a review of it. I don't really think I want to go much further. Diablo 3 Resurrected is, everything that you would expect from Diablo 3 Resurrected. It is, without a doubt, Diablo 3 in just about every way now. Some people were like, man, it would be really cool if they made a Diablo 3 Resurrected. Well, they don't need to anymore, because they have Diablo 3 Resurrected right now. It's called Diablo 4, Lord of Hatred. And I don't think there's anything that they've left out. I'm pretty sure they have everything from Diablo 3 at this point in Diablo 4, Lord of Hatred. I'd like to start with the good points. People tend to say that I am so negative these days about Diablo 4. But you know, it hasn't always been that way. There was a time when I had lots of fun playing Diablo 4, and I have to say that that time is gone. I mean, one thing that I will say before I say anything else is that I kind of felt like I was forcing myself to play. Like, it's still the same game that I always remember, but it's like there's a magic is gone. Like, something specific that kept me playing, that the theory crafting, or maybe the skill tree, or building my character, or coming up with specific ideas for interesting builds, something's gone, and I just can't quite put my finger on it, and I just don't really enjoy playing anymore. But let's start with the good stuff before we get into the bad stuff, so that I can at least talk about some of the things that they changed that are something I like. So first off, let's talk about Diablo 3 Resurrected. The good. So what are the good changes that they've made? Well, one of the good changes that I'll call out right off the bat is that blue items, rare items, white items are pretty much all extremely valuable at this point. You will occasionally find, like, for instance, an amulet that is blue that has a greater affix on it that can be imbued with more power, and you can take that amulet over to the cube, and you can, this is not the Erasure cube, by the way. This is definitely the Kanai's cube from Diablo 3. They seem to have a tendency to do that now, which is where they basically just capitalize on the Diablo 2 wording, but add the Diablo 3 items. But, you know, we'll talk about that later. You can, however, take this item to the cube, and you can beef it up, and you can very easily make a very effective and very powerful ancestral item that has a greater affix and is really quite useful. In many ways, what they've done with the item system, making it so that the whites, yes, even the white items, the blues, the rares, all have significant value, is actually quite interesting. Like, for instance, I could take this tunic over to the cube, and I could potentially roll this Q tunic as a unique item if I wanted to. So I can upgrade it into a unique, and it will basically roll it into one of the random uniques. And bam, now I have a Rage of Heragroth. So interestingly enough, and it's an ancestral, because I used an ancestral base in the upgrade. It's a really good system. Nothing really bad for me to say about the system. I actually really enjoy it. I think it's a good overall addition to the game, and I think it adds a lot of very interesting ways that you can potentially, like, make your character better. So, you know, like rares. Let's do normal, blue, and rare items have value. This is actually really cool, and I think it's a good change overall. And I'm gonna call out as many good changes as I can. Another really good change is the addition of the Kanai's cube. I know earlier I just called the Kanai's cube the Diablo 3 cube, and it is the Diablo 3 cube. Diablo 3 cube edition. The Diablo 3 Kanai's cube wasn't a bad thing. I do prefer the Diablo 2 Erasure cube to the Diablo 3 version, but the Diablo 3 version is not the worst thing in the world. It was actually a very good addition to Diablo 3, and overall I think it was a positive influence on Diablo 3 as a whole. It allows you to do all sorts of very interesting things, like transmute various effects, like you can add affixes to an item. And let's go ahead and do that real quick. So let's take that amulet that I was showing you earlier, and let's start rolling some affixes on it. So we have this blue amulet that is ancestral, and it also has a greater affix. So we're going to add an affix to it. And now we have a blue with poison resistance. Not really the best roll, but let's roll again. Now we have maximum life. That's a good roll. And then let's roll the last one. We got life on hit, so not really the greatest item. We could take this over to the Occultist. I can now enchant it. And we can take off one of these. I'd probably take off the poison res. Life on hit's not terrible. It's not the best stat, but it's not amazing either. And then we could, of course, get what we wanted. Like, for instance, I'm building a max resource character, so max resource definitely seems like an interesting choice. Or you could re-roll until you get plus skills or various other things. It makes it very easy for you to be able to craft up an item and get some interesting stats. And, of course, you can then take this and you can take it and imprint it, turning it into a legendary, socket it, the whole works. Kind of makes almost like a pseudo crafting system. Not quite as detailed as something like Path of Exile 2, for instance, which has a very detailed crafting system, but definitely more detailed in crafting than, like, for instance, Diablo 2. Now, the Kanai's Cube definitely has the Diablo 3 stuff in it, though, where you basically click on the thing and it just auto-populates the item into the panel, and you don't really have to worry about actually doing anything. You can, however, actually do stuff, though. Like, as an example, if I wanted to, I could just simply put items in the cube, and I could just re-roll them and not really have to worry too much about, like, the ingrained system, which I think is actually something that I rather enjoy. I always loved the tactile, like, sensation of basically taking items and putting them in there together and then having them re-roll. Like, for instance, I could take 3 of these set tokens. Doesn't really matter. Let's just take 3 of them. I don't really care which ones they are unless they have plus skills on them. So let's put this one back. Let's grab one that doesn't have plus skills. And you can take 3 of basically most items in the game. You can put them into the cube. Manually, of course. You don't even have to press the button and have it auto-populate. And you can just transmute it into something else. Now, sometimes you get good results. Sometimes you get bad. But it's similar to Diablo 2's 3-to-1 ratio. So you can actually put items in here manually and just do the recipes if you know what they are. Or you can just press the buttons and it just auto-populates everything for you. The Kanai's Cube also came with something else. So in Diablo 3, it wasn't just about transmuting items. There was also an entire section that had to do with powers, basically being able to take the unique power from, like, a piece of equipment, for instance, like, say, something like Temerity, and then using that unique power without actually being able to equip the item. This was a huge benefit in Diablo 3 and enabled a large number of builds in the game, which actually was a really good thing in general. And so adding that into Diablo 4, I think, is a really good change. They did this in the form of the Talisman tree, which there are 2 parts of the Talisman tree. There is the Charm, which actually enables the sockets in the first place, and then there are the Talismans that go into, or maybe I got it backwards. But anyway, you get basically a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 total slots, and you can do that with either a legendary with a +1 charm slot or a unique seal. I think it's seal, actually. It's seals and charms, even though it says talismans. I don't terminology. Basically, how these charms work is they give you specific benefits, and you can use them, obviously, to beef up your character. However, you can also get unique versions of these, which allow you to essentially use a unique without actually using the unique. Like, for instance, I have here a Blood Mad Idol, which is essentially a unique talisman, which, if I equip, will give me the effect of that unique item, allowing me to get the effect of a unique without actually wearing unique. Exactly the same as the Kanai's Cube in Diablo 3. The only problem is that they also put into the Kanai's Cube sets. Now, sets are identical to Diablo 3 sets. And it's very interesting because it's a parallel that we have to talk about. And I guess we could also put in here, I think it's Kanai's. I can't remember the exact pronunciation for Kanai's Cube. Kanai. Yeah, I think that's correct. Okay, a little apostrophe there. Cube powers. We'll put that in the list as well. Now, the problem with this is that just like when they added the Kanai's cube powers in Diablo 3, they also added the sets. And the problem with the sets is that they're so freaking powerful that they tend to override the pretty much everything else that you would do. Now, there is some good in the Diablo 4 sets versus the Diablo 3 sets, and the only good of that is that they don't take up equipment slots. This has got to be the only good thing about sets in Diablo 4 versus Diablo 3. So in Diablo 3, your set would basically take up your entire character. I mean, it would take up your boots, your pants, your gloves, your armor, your helmet, your rings. Like, you would pretty much almost every single item on your character, with the exception of a couple slots, would get taken up by your set, which would pretty much completely override your ability to make your own builds because, well, the set was your build at that point. Now, the set still is your build with the way that they currently have it set up. You still follow exactly what it tells you to do, and you get huge bonuses to your defense and also to your offensive capability, which has led to a return to Diablo 3's instant death mechanic. So if you guys are unaware of how this functions, the problem with this is that the sets oftentimes just simply overrode everything else that you could do. And although the Kanai's cube powers are very good, and I promise to talk about the good before I talk about the bad, but this is one that it has to be talked about together. Because although the Kanai's cube powers were very good, the sets basically just kind of overrode the Kanai's powers and made it so that they were relatively useless. You could set up a couple builds with Kanai's powers, and it still required a set. You still had to use the Litany of Nightmares set to actually make it work. I think it's called the Litany of Nightmares anyway. But the thing is that, like, the sets were so powerful that they pretty much made your entire character extremely damaged with one ability, or usually like a handful of abilities. And they also gave you a huge damage reduction as a return. Now, the problem with the damage reduction is that damage reduction requires you to continually attack with whatever the skill is that they give you. And if you don't, and you lose that damage reduction for whatever reason, especially the ones that come in the form of stacks, which are much harder to maintain, well, you fight these monsters that do massive, massive amounts of damage, and you're relying on this damage reduction to stay alive. Well, if the damage reduction falls off for whatever reason, you're just immediately dead. And it really kind of isn't much different than Diablo 3. The sets are just as egregious as they are in Diablo 3. They take over pretty much the entire character. And although this is definitely a positive, I have to add an addendum here that the sets take over. And they still do. Like, they still pretty much entirely take over. Are there builds that you could potentially do without the sets? I think so. But the sets are so powerful that I'm not entirely sure that you will be able to recreate, using just regular items and unique talismans, the full power bonus that a lot of these sets are giving. Because they're giving like 200, 300, 400% multipliers to the abilities, which make them just absolutely insane. They do open up some interesting builds, like giving you the ability to summon all your demons at one time, like for instance this one, or they give you the ability to just get massive amounts of damage by sacrificing your minions to the gods. And some of them do offer some interesting options, but overall they're literally the same as their Diablo 3 counterparts. They're just massive amounts of damage, massive amounts of damage reduction, and very little else in there. It's really just a matter of choose the one that you like the best, which is very similar to Diablo 3. I do like the Kanai's cube powers. I do think it's going to open some things up, but I have some questions on whether or not the Kanai's cube powers, or rather the Talisman powers, being in the game is really going to do very much when they also have the sets sharing the same slots, and then the sets take up 5 out of 6 of those slots on just about every single one. As you can see, 5-piece set, 5-piece set, 5-piece set, 5-piece set, 5-piece set. It's every single one of them so far, pretty much, with the exception of some of the little baby sets like this, are 5 pieces. And so your talisman slots all get consumed by the sets, and you really can't use them for this, right? So the sets pretty much just take that over almost completely. One thing that I had originally thought was a good change was the skill tree. And I don't think that anymore. In fact, I have to put in parentheses bad. And there's a reason why I do this. First, I really did like this skill tree change. If you haven't seen the new skill trees, the skill trees generally offer you the ability to put a huge number of points into an ability. They've taken away all the passive nodes on the tree. I know it's hard to tell because there's a bunch of crap all over the tree now, and so you can't really tell that the passives are gone, but all the passives are gone. Another thing is that they generally offer you 2 passive bonuses for each ability that you have to choose between, and then they offer you 3 basically like unique effects that you can get on your items. Now the weird thing about this change is that at first glance, and honestly I was also of this opinion, I thought it was a good change. I looked at it and I was like, okay, not quite as confusing as it was before with all of the passive nodes. It seems better. But as I played and I got more into it, I started to realize that I didn't particularly like what they were doing. For instance, in the previous version, you put in like 5 points into the skill, and now you put in 15. And all over the equipment in the game is these massive numbers of plus to skills. You can get so many plus to skills on your equipment now, especially from like the set charms and things. Like I can see, like right here I have one that's +3 occult skills up at the top, and then there's another one that's +2 abyss skills, and then I've got another one that's +3 occult, and so forth and so on. And you can get +3 occult on just about every single one of your charms. So like for instance, I could easily have, you know, like 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. And then I could also have like 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, you know, and so forth and so on. But the thing is that like what they did to the skill tree, they basically made it so that plus the skills is far less effective than it was before. +30 to skills sounds absolutely amazing for the previous system. But +30 skills is not quite as amazing for this system. Does it still give you a buff? Yeah, it does. But like it's nowhere near what it was before. Also, the number of skill points that they give you, you can pretty much max out every single ability that you would want within reason. There's very little choice in the matter. In the previous skill tree, you had to do a lot of thinking. You had to, you know, figure out what you wanted to do, like which skills you wanted, how many points you wanted to put into those skills, and how, you know, effective you needed them to be. Well, with the way that they currently have the system, I was able to max out pretty much everything that I needed, and I still had like 24 skill points left over, and I didn't even have access to all my skill points. In fact, at the end, I'm assuming that I would probably have somewhere around 30 skill points left over by the end of my journey in leveling my character. And it basically had to do with the fact that, well, there's not really a lot to spend your points on. Not everything is worth dumping maximum points into, and it creates this odd situation where you often find yourself sitting on a large number of points which you don't necessarily need to or want to spend. As an example, let me go take a look at my Warlock, which I should pretty much just call a Witch Doctor because that's what it is. It's almost verbatim a copy of the Witch Doctor with maybe like a little bit of Demon Hunter pet skills thrown in. It's pretty much what it is. It's like a Demon Hunter with Demon Hunter pet skills and like the Witch Doctor spells combined together into like one conglomerate character. So looking at my skill tree, let's take a look at my skill tree real quick, and so I can show you what I mean. So as you can see, I currently have 80 points on this character, and the problem with this is that I don't really need 80 points. In fact, I can pretty much get away with utilizing a much smaller number of points in general. And let me go ahead and just I'll put my points in again real quick, how I actually have them spent. And we're going to avoid spending the points in things that I didn't actually want to spend points into. So first off is Nether Step, which I was literally just going to 1 point. I have absolutely no reason to spend more than that in this skill. It was just a movement ability, and I took it for just the fact that it was a movement ability. I also didn't need to put points into Umbral Chains past its ability, so we can take out pretty much all the points from Umbral Chains, because the only reason I have it is literally to spend resource. And as you can see, just taking the points out of those abilities, which I wasn't necessarily going to build, I currently have 29 extra points. I could potentially dump those points into another skill, but I only have 6 skill slot assignments, so I'm kind of limited. When you start building your characters, you'll kind of see the same thing. Is that you'll put yourself in a position where you realize that you need a specific ability, but you don't necessarily want to put points into it. And there might be a specific reason why you don't put points into it. Like, for instance, with this ability, the Metamorphosis ability, it does have a damage bonus attack on it, and it generates dominance. But when you choose one of these that allows you to keep your active skills but stay in the Metamorphosis, you don't really gain anything by putting points into Metamorphosis, and I've tested it both ways. If I take this out and I go with like the regular Metamorphosis to get the Archfiend skills, then yes, putting points into this actually does something, but not if you choose one of these. And the same thing goes for a lot of these. Like this one right here, Sigil of Summons, only gives you a demon or a summon demon if you kill things, and you have to kill a rather large number of monsters to really make it function. And there are some ways you can kind of get around it if you utilize things like Command Fallen, but for the most part, if you're not using one of the specific ways to get large numbers of kills for this ability, the only thing that adding points does is increases the damage of the demons that are summoned with the ability. The ability itself offers a really nice bonus to the summons like duration, but overall just not really worth putting points into unless you have a way to exploit the demons that are coming from this ability. And it's not an easy thing to do. In fact, a lot of abilities tend to be this way, is that the only reason to put any points into them is for damage. And if you're using them for utility, you don't really need to put any points into them, in which case you just have a large number of points left over. I ended up putting points into things that I didn't necessarily want to put points into because, well, I just have extra points, and so why don't I? And this leads me to a very odd conclusion. And the very odd conclusion is basically this. The skill tree for Diablo 4 has literally become the D3 skill tree. And you might be saying to me at this point in the video, you're like, but Ginger, there was no Diablo 3 skill tree. And you're correct. There was no Diablo 3 skill tree. In fact, when you went to choose your Diablo 3 skills, you basically just chose them, right? You just went to a panel and you just got to choose exactly what you wanted, and you got to choose the modifiers for exactly what you wanted, and there were no skill points for you to put in. You basically just got 6 skills, right? And you got to do whatever you wanted with those skills. Well, the way that they currently have it set up is there's basically no tension in the skill tree anymore. There's zero tension. You're not choosing and picking what you want to use. You're just simply doing the Diablo 3 method, which is essentially just picking a skill. And they give you plenty of skill points to max it out, so I don't even know why there's skill points in the first place, because they basically just give you the skill points to max it out. And then you get to choose some upgrades. And here's where things get really weird. On the Warlock, you don't really notice this because it's a Warlock, and you haven't really played, like the Warlock before this expansion. So it ends up being one of those things that's just kind of like off into the wilderness. But if we go to a character that's already been established, I can explain this a little bit better and why the choices are definitely strange in another way. So if we take a look at the Necromancer skill tree, one of the builds that I did, which was a very silly build, and I will fully admit that it was a very silly build, I called it my popcorn build. It was a Decompose build. The Decompose ability had a bunch of aspects, and those aspects were things like the ability to chain to multiple targets, or a specific upgrade that caused it to explode multiple times. Now, when you look at the upgrade options, there are upgrade options like Decompose becomes a bone skill. Decompose causes a burst around the target every second, dealing an additional damage to them. That's the one for the explosion. And then Dry Rot, Decompose chains to 3 additional enemies. Interestingly enough, is they took the aspect that I used to combine with this and turned it into its own upgrade choice, which basically now prevents you from being able to tie these two together. And in fact, one of the things that you'll notice across the board is that they've done this for just about everything. That there were aspects that you could potentially combine together with other aspects to make a very interesting character, but now you really can't because those aspects have been tied into the skill tree, and you are now forced to choose between 1 or 2 of those options instead of getting them together. It's definitely a very odd thing. And it seems like what they did is they basically just did a once over and they were like, okay, every skill needs to have a third option because we said so. And so then they took aspects that existed within the game previously that enabled certain builds, and then they just simply turned them into options, which in a way, unfortunately, just neuters a bunch of the builds that were potentially relying on those options to make interesting characters. And I took a look at every single character, by the way. I didn't just take a look at just the Necromancer or just the Warlock or whatever. I took a look at all of them, including the Crusader, and yeah, I'm not going to call it anything else. They all have builds like that basically cause the skill tree to have issues. So the skill tree becomes a good thing from one aspect that they took away all the passives, but then it becomes a bad thing from another aspect, which is essentially that there's 0 tension left in the skill tree. You don't have to pick and choose, really. Like, if you want an ability, you're going to have enough skill points to max it out, grab all the options, and do whatever you want with it. You got 6 buttons that you can press, and they give you enough skill points, essentially, to max out all 6 buttons, and have, like, a movement ability, have, like, a utility skill, and honestly, I don't even have all the skill points. I don't even know what the current max skill points is anymore, because, like, a bunch of the skill points come from the season journey. This stupid season journey, which is just straight out of Diablo 3. The classes. So they added 2 classes into the game. They added the Crusader, which is literally just the Crusader. And they also added the Warlock, which seems to be a conglomeration of a Witch Doctor and a Demon Hunter pets. It's an interesting class. There's definitely, like, a downside for me to the Warlock, though. I like the Witch Doctor, so this is why I'm putting it in the good. Okay, I did enjoy the Witch Doctor. It was a character that wasn't really very loved in Diablo 3, but I thought it was okay. And I had a lot of fun playing with things like the spider pots, the vomit skull, like the little like acid blobs that you could spawn. There were all sorts of little fun builds, like the chicken build and whatnot. And the Warlock has the chicken build. He has quite a few of the Witch Doctor skills, and I think that if you've played the Witch Doctor in Diablo 3, I think you'll agree. The problem is that the Paladin was called the Paladin, and people expected Paladin, but what they got was the Crusader. The Warlock is kind of a weird situation. There were a lot of us who played the D2, and I understand that the D2 Warlock was added for, like, no other reason other than just simply to promote Diablo 4. But we also kind of expected a little bit, and I don't know why, but we expected that the D4 Warlock would have some of the same skills that the D2 Warlock has. But the D2 Warlock is really just not the D4 Warlock. It's not even close. Like, they're not even remotely similar in almost any way, shape, or form. There's maybe like one skill, I think, on the entire character that might correlate to the Warlock, and I think that would be the chains. There is a Miasma Chains on Diablo 2, and there is a actual chain ability, which sort of works similar, but it's better than the Diablo 2 version, in my opinion. And it's sort of similar, but like, there's no melee, there's no bow lock, there's no echoing strike, there's no nothing. It's actually really freaking strange. And a lot of people have said this, is that the Warlock in Diablo 2 is way better than the Warlock in Diablo 4, and they're not wrong. They really are not wrong. And not only that, but the Witch Doctor was always an acquired taste. It was never a character that, like, really appealed to everybody. And I feel like a lot of people are bouncing off the Witch Doctor Warlock for the same reason that people bounced off the Witch Doctor in Diablo 3. I mean, I think it's a good class to have in the game. I really enjoyed the Witch Doctor myself, and so when I played the Warlock in Diablo 4, I was immediately drawn to the skills, like, for instance, the Command Fallen, which is basically the spider pots, and several of the other abilities, which were very similar as well, like the summons. But for the most part, I still enjoy the Diablo 2 Warlock better. I found myself wondering, where's the Bowlock? Where's Mirrored Blades? Where's Cleave? It was really strange for them to put more work into the Warlock for Diablo 2, I feel like, than they put in for the Warlock to Diablo 4. It's stupid for me to say it like this, but it really does feel this way. It feels like they put in a lot of effort and they put in a lot of thought into the Diablo 2 Warlock. And the D4 Warlock is nothing more than a lazy, just absolutely lazy copy pasta of the Witch Doctor and the Demon Hunter. And if you liked the Witch Doctor and the Demon Hunter pets and the Witch Doctor spells, then I guess, that's great. And I didn't absolutely hate the Diablo 4 Warlock because I enjoyed the Witch Doctor. But I can totally see people who have played the Warlock in D2 and then hop over to D4 and just immediately wonder, like, what the hell is this even? Like, what the hell is this? And both of these are nothing more than, like, lazy copy pastas of previous classes. Like, the D4 Warlock is literally just a copy pasta of the Witch Doctor and the Demon Hunter, and the Paladin is literally just a copy pasta of the Crusader, with basically zero Paladin skills. There's nothing on the Paladin that even remotely resembles the actual Diablo 2 Paladin skills. They're all just D3 Crusader skills. Other good things. I'm trying my best to find as many good things as I can before I start laying into the bad things. The campaign. Did I already talk about the campaign? I don't think I talked about the campaign. The campaign was overall, I think, maybe 90% good. I didn't have too much issues with it. The only real issue that I had with the campaign was a rather odd sticking point, in my opinion, is that Lorath never would have fallen for Mephisto's trick. This is kind of like a really weird one for me because I don't feel like that this added anything to the story. So there was a moment at the very beginning of the story, a spoiler, where Mephisto basically tricks Lorath into swinging his knife, at which point he ends up cutting somebody else. And this kind of leads into a domino effect throughout the entire story where Lorath, kind of feels sorry for himself or whatever. But it's crazy to me is that, Lorath was a Haradrim. He was basically a prophet of God. A god, the god was Anu, and Anu split into 5 archangels, and Tyrael was one of those archangels. Tyrael created the Haradrim. Lorath is literally one of the Haradrim. And he has many, 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 many years of experience. I do not believe he would have fallen for this stupid trick that they played on him. In fact, I feel like they just did Lorath dirty in general. And not only that, but I honestly feel like as if they just didn't do Lorath dirty, the story would have been better in general at all. And, you know, mute me if you don't want to hear this spoiler, but basically, if they had just simply had Lorath dodge the trick, not fall for it, had the Queen of the Amazons be more fickle in her following of Akarat, essentially more conflicted, and in the end, even if everything played out exactly the same, even if Lorath still plays his story exactly as it was before, the silly thing is the story becomes better as a result, because it's more believable that Lorath would have avoided the trick. It's more believable that the queen would be a conflicted pawn of Mephisto, not this like pawn that was just like instantly, you know, on Mephisto's side just simply because he did one little tiny trick. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Lorath had an actual history with this woman. He was trying to teach, you know, talk to her and tell her what was going on. There was no confliction whatsoever, really. She was just on Mephisto's side as soon as the trick was played, and that was it. And it doesn't even matter. Like, nothing could have changed at the end. It could have ended exactly as it was before, but it would have been a better story if they just had let this out. Overall, though, I did like the campaign. I think it was fun. If you want to play for just the campaign, I could totally see spending $40 on the game just to run through the campaign and have fun. One good thing I will add about the campaign is that, like, you don't really find any GG endgame gear during the campaign. So during the campaign, you're not really going to find any GG in-game gear. It actually kind of makes the game more difficult and more fun in general, and you actually have to do a little, you know, thinking about what you're going to put on and, like, what kind of gear you're going to use. It's a little bit more difficult to gear up your character in the beginning, but that goes away relatively quickly. Once you hit level 70 and once you start getting into your Torment tiers, the gear starts flowing in rather rapidly, and before you know it, you'll have pretty much everything that you ever wanted. In fact, like, once you get one character established, like, you can get another character established in, like, 30 to 40 minutes. Even less if you do a little bit of proactive cash saving. Any other good things? I got, like, 37 minutes here of the good, and I want to hop into the bad. I'm trying to think if there's anything else good for me to add into this list. I would say that, like, overall the build diversity seems to be higher than before. But I can't necessarily say that it's a better system. So we can put in, like, more build diversity. Let's start on the bad. So we're 37 minutes in, and we're going to start talking about bad stuff. The first thing is the sets. The sets were arguably the worst thing about Diablo 3, like, pretty much bar none. They were cancer. They were the build diversity killing squashers of the universe. There are some people that are defenders of Diablo 3 sets, and I'm not talking to you because you guys are crazy. But I'm talking to the people who actually understand, who played Diablo 3 and who actually went through the process of trying to make your own builds and realized that there was pretty much nothing that you could do that would outpace the sets. That the sets were literally just put them on and win the game. And nothing's really changed here. In Diablo 4, if you find a full set and you put it on, it almost instantly elevates you to, like, Torment 7 or Torment 8 without much of a challenge. Like, your character goes from a weakling, baby, to God just for putting on one of the sets. It's exactly the same and exactly the worst thing that they should have they should have never done. They never should have added sets in Diablo 4, and honestly, doing so has just kind of cheapened the overall progression of the game even more so. They're too easy to find. On top of that, you can easily put together a set, like, within no time whatsoever, and then it just becomes finding the perfect pieces of your set, because, well, that's just the whole grind in Diablo 3, right? Because you could literally fill your character up with a set almost instantaneously. In fact, you just do your season journey and you would get a full set. And then once you got your full set, then it was just about finding, you know, like the best versions of those items, so that you had, you know, your, what is it, the ancestral versions, which in Diablo 3 was essentially just your what was it, infernal, or it was a couple different versions. My brain is not set up for Diablo 3. In general, I don't see the sets as a good thing. I see the sets as a bad thing. I see the sets as a moving toward more of a brain dead game where you basically just put your set on and just move on. In fact, if that's how you want to play the game, it works. Just go get a set, pick a set, doesn't matter what set, because they're all broken. They all give you the same exact modifiers. Every single one of them is going to give you a damage reduction bonus at 3 pieces. It's also going to give you a huge damage bonus at 5 pieces, and something like sort of inconsequential or kind of neat at 2 pieces. And they all work exactly the same. You use this specific ability to gain some sort of damage reduction. You use this specific ability to gain massive amounts of damage, which then causes your character to just win. It's literally just an I win button. Another big negative for me was, in general, just like the overall feel of the game. The whole game just feels like nothing you do matters anymore. Like, nothing that you do matters. There's no player agency. It's like the player agency has been completely taken away, to the point where you pretty much just put on a set and win. There's no real agency in choosing your skills anymore, because pretty much all the skills are just kind of very samey. All the passive points are gone, so there's not a lot of choice in the passive tree. The Paragon board is also just very much so like, this works for me or it doesn't work for me. What should I choose? Well, the thing that works for me. And so there's very little choice there either. I mean, I could set up builds that go into higher torments, I guess, and once you start getting into like Torment 11 and 12, maybe your choices will matter a little bit more than like in the early game. But you're going to get from like Torment 1 to Torment like 8 or 9 easily, just by like putting on a set and mildly attending to your equipment so it's not trash. Like, you really don't have to do a whole lot of anything to make your character strong enough to start getting massive amounts of loot. And that's kind of like another negative here, is that you don't really find any gear in the endgame gear during the campaign, right? Well, not the case once you hit the torments. So once you start getting into like Torment 1 to, you know, like 9, the loot starts dropping rather rapidly. So it goes almost like full 180 from no loot whatsoever to the loot is raining on you. Literally just, you know, piñatas. There is a new system, a new endgame system. It's here. It's called the War Room. And the War Room allows you to choose specific actions, and they give you tons of additional loot for completing the actions. The amount of loot you get is kind of insane. In fact, if you do the War Room, you get so much stuff, and you also get all these neat skill points that allow you to do specific things. These skill points are interesting, and I would have included these into the good section, because there are some really fun things that you can add with the skill points here. But you can't get any of the skill points unless you do the war plans. And you can't do the war plans unless you complete the entire thing. And this means that oftentimes you need to do things that you're not interested in. The war plans for me, when I first started, were kind of cool. I would just run a couple of them and I'd see what I was doing. And I'd get a bunch of loot at the end. Well, then I realized that I just didn't want to do that particular activity. I would go into the war plans and I would pull up the war plans and see what I was doing, and I would realize that the activity that I was interested in just wasn't on the board. And I started to realize very quickly that like there was almost like a lack of freedom in the game all of a sudden. And that's why I'm going to throw the war plans in the bad as well. So the war plans basically take away any of your agency that was left. Like earlier, I said nothing you do matters, and the player agency is rather useless. Well, like again, player agency is taken away. The war plans don't really offer you a lot of options. So when you go on here and you look and you're like, okay, maybe I'd like to farm bosses and get some unique items. Well, there's like one layer boss on here out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 options. It's like they're trying to force you to do things that you don't want to do to give you rewards for the things that you do want to do. Maybe they realized that people weren't engaging in specific activities, like maybe they weren't engaging in the Crossed Undercity, or maybe they weren't engaging in the pits as much as they would have liked, or maybe they weren't doing the Infernal Hordes as much as they would like. But basically what the War Plans does is it just kind of forces you to do what they want you to do. And you might say to yourself, well, why don't you just go do the stuff on your own? Well, if you do the stuff on your own, you don't get any of the points to level up these trees. You don't get activity points for doing the stuff on your own. You only get activity points if you're doing them in the war plan. On top of that, every single one of these things gives you a huge bonus to like armor, obducite, experience orbs, basically just like random loot, unique items, and there's all sorts of crazy stuff that you can get by doing the war plans. So you honestly, it gets to the point where you feel like you're stupid for not doing the war plans, even though you'd rather just go do something else. Like if you wanted to just chill out and farm some bosses for a little while, you might want to do that. But then you realize that farming bosses outside of the war plans means you're not getting any of the special loot that you get through the war plans. And you're also not getting any of the points that you would be getting by farming those bosses with the war plans. So in general, farming the bosses outside of the war plans just seems like an absolute waste of your time. And the war plans basically created this situation in my head where I felt like if I did what I wanted, I was being punished. And if I did what the war plans wanted me to do, I was being punished because I didn't want to do what the war plans wanted me to do. Like I don't want to run the pit 17 times in a row unless I want to run the pit 17 times in a row. In fact, it's almost to the point where a lot of the times I would have preferred just simply running something else. It's so hard for me to explain what I did like about Diablo 4. There was a point where I really felt like Diablo 4 had kind of hit a nail on the head, which is they gave you a lot of choice. They let you, make the decisions of where you were going to go, what you were going to do. They made you give you the decisions of like how you were going to build your character, what gear you were going to wear. And all of those choices, I think, is what led me to enjoy the game. And it feels like throughout this entire expansion, they've taken away as many choices as they possibly can from the player and smoothed over the play style to the point where the player just doesn't really have a lot of choice anymore in what they're doing. Like there's no tension in the skill tree anymore. You don't have to like pick and choose what you want. You get 6 skills and they are fully leveled up. There's no like tension or like choice in where you want to go. Like, what do you want to do, guys? Do you want to go to the Helltide? Do you want to go, do, a world boss? Do you want to go do, what do you guys want to do? Well, it doesn't matter because, like, there's very little choice in the matter. Like, you're going to go to your war plans, and your war plans is going to tell you what to do. And then you're going to do what the war plans tell you to do because you're stuck in that until you complete the war plans. And as you progress more and more with the war plans, they just get bigger and larger, and they... Instead of like, being like a 3 run war plan, it's like a 5 or a 6 or a 7, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. It's not fun like this. This is kind of fun over here, but you have to do this to get to this. And like, I don't want to do this, so I'm probably never going to get this. Like, if I'm being perfectly honest, like, I don't have it in me to sit here and grind these war plans 7,847,000 times to get all of this stuff leveled up so that I can then ignore the war plans and then go do what I want. Like, it's just not in me. I can't. I don't know how many runs it would take, but it would take a lot of runs on these war plans to get what I'm looking for, to like max out all these in their 7 ranks each. And then at that point, I'm probably just going to be completely bored with the game. But I'm going to be perfectly honest. I am bored with the game. I don't know what happened. Like, I don't know where the game fell short. But, like, I tried to play the Warlock. I had fun with the campaign. I hopped into Endgame. I leveled up my character relatively quickly. I was in, like, Torment 7, Torment 8, like, within no time. And then, I just found myself just bored out of my mind. Just, there was nothing, there was no choices for me. There was nothing to do. Like, it was pretty much just do what the war plan told me to do, turn off my brain, and, like, throw the key away. And then, like, when I finish the war plan, then what do I do next? Just start another war plan. It used to be when I logged into Diablo 4, I would make a choice. You know, I'd be like, hey, what do I want to do? Like, do I want to go to Infernal Hordes and start getting some gear? Do I want to go to the bosses and farm some uniques? Or do I want to go into the pit and grind out my glyphs? Or whatever. But, like, this pretty much just took away any fun that I had left. Like, if there was fun left, I don't have any anymore. It's just completely boring now. The Warlock. I enjoy the Witch Doctor. So it pains me to add the Witch Doctor into the bad section, even though I also added the Witch Doctor into the good section, because I feel like the Witch Doctor is boring. Or rather, the Warlock is boring, specifically. I don't know how to put it. I don't know how to actually explain it. If you go play the Warlock, I think you'll understand what I mean. It's just not a fun character. It's just boring. The same thing also, honestly, for the Crusader. I never really found the Crusader to be a very fun class, and I find the Crusader to be extremely boring as well. They're just both old classes that weren't really that great, honestly, when they were originally added into Diablo 3. I think we all played the Crusader because we thought it was the Paladin, and we were all disappointed when we realized it was not the Paladin. And the Warlock, likewise, for some reason or another, and I think it has to do with the fact that they added the Warlock into Diablo 2, is that I now compare the Warlocks to each other, and I know I shouldn't do that, because technically they were added at the same time, right? They added the Warlock in D2, and they added the Warlock in D4 basically at the same time. But, like, the Warlock in Diablo 2 is just so much better and so much more fun than the Warlock in Diablo 4. And I think that they're both just really boring. Moving on to some more things. So, the charms themselves. If we take the set charms out of the equation, the regular charms, there is some bad on the regular charms too, and it has to do with these plus the skill bonuses. It's almost like they think we're stupid. They added these, like, massive amounts of plus the skills. So, massive plus skill bonuses. And it's...
Hello.
They don't seem to do anything. You can add in huge amounts of plus the skills to an ability, and it does relatively nothing now because of the way that they scaled it. Right now, like, for instance, I have level 15 Command Fallen, and I got level 28 Command Fallen. I could easily bring this up with plus the skills. I could get massive amounts of plus the skills. If I sit here and I try, I can get plus 3, plus 3, plus 3, plus 3, plus 3, plus 3. I can also get plus 3 here. I can also get plus 4 here. I can get another, like, plus 4 here, and so forth and so on. And in the previous version of the game, that would have been amazing, but, like, now it just seems like it's complete and utter garbage. Like, they basically took the skills and they kept the plus the skills the same, but then they scaled all the skills so the plus skills didn't matter, anymore. And I don't want to say that they don't matter, but they matter far less than they ever did before. And it's almost like a hoodwink sort of a situation. Like they're just deliberately trying to hoodwink you into thinking that this plus skills are amazing, but at the same time realizing later on that they don't really add that much damage. Especially when you could just have a set there and then have +3 skills on every single set as well. Um, I don't. I'm trying to like not be as negative as I can ever possibly be about it. Like, do I think it's a horrible game, and do I think that nobody should ever play it? No. I mean, it's fun for what it is. If you want to play the campaign, if you just want to enjoy the game, it's there. Um, but if I had to compare this to like a previous version of the game, like for instance, if I compared this to like Diablo 4 season like 8 or something like that, I wouldn't put this above Diablo 4 season 8. Like I would put like D4 seasons, let's say like 4 to 10 are greater than D4 LOH. There was more fun stuff in those seasons. The build diversity was better. The game itself was more fun. It actually had some challenge to it. Like, yeah, there were bugs. Yeah, there were problems. But like, the current version of Diablo 4 is smoothed over like pudding. There's no meaningful choices. There's no way to actually like exhibit your player agency. Like I don't know how to explain it other than that. Like you go into the game like when you're in the end game, you go into the game and the first thing you do is pretty much just walk over here to the war table. You get a moderately small amount of choices between option A column and option B column. And even that is taken away from you because they literally offer you two options. One is a baby option that gives you nothing, and one is a blue option which gives you something more. One will be a baby option that gives you a blue set of bonuses, and one will be a yellow option which gives you a much greater bonus than everything else. And even when they give you the ability to choose between two things, they often give you two options for bonuses where one of them is just extremely better than the other. You then do your war plan all the way through to the end, and then you do your war plan all the way through to the end, and then you do your war plan all the way through to the end, and then you do your war plan all the way through to the end. It's boring. Even if you try and go outside of the war plan, I mean, it's still boring. Something that they've done with this patch has taken away any fun that there was left, and I feel like I'm just repeating myself at this point. The cube, for all of its interestingness, is I always think of the term 2 steps forward or 1 step forward, 2 steps back, every single time. It's been a mantra for Diablo 4 almost every single patch. They always add one good thing and then two bad things. They always add one good thing, like rare items actually being useful, and then they add two bad things, like the charms, for instance, would be one of the bad things. And the good things very seldomly can override the bad things that they add. And it looks like it's gotten to the point where this is just literally just Diablo 3 Resurrected. I mean, there's nothing left of Diablo 2 in this game. Like, you might be like, oh, but there's a Heraldric Cube Ginger. Like, well, no, it's the Kanai's Cube. You'd be like, oh, but there's a Paladin Ginger. Like, yep, no, that's just a Crusader. But there's a Warlock Ginger. Well, no, that's literally just the Witch Doctor. I don't. But there's sets. No, those are literally just Diablo 3 sets. The same bad Diablo 3 sets that everybody hated in Diablo 3, just added into Diablo 2. They'd be like, oh, but they reworked the skill tree Ginger. It's like, but how is it any different than than this now? Like, how is it any different than the Diablo 3 skill tree at this point? Like, they've basically just taken this. I mean, remove the skill ranks from this, okay? So take the skill ranks away from the abilities. How is it any different than this now? You pick an ability, you pick some passives, you grab your little ending rune. How many runes were there usually per skill? There was usually like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's like 6 or 7 like runes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I mean, it's essentially the same exact thing as this, just converted into a skill tree with skill points. But the skill points, honestly, they seem like they don't even matter anymore. Like, you get 15 ranks by default, which means that it might as well just be one rank. And then they give you so many plus the skills, and the plus the skills don't even really have much of an effect anymore, so it's literally just this all over again. Another chalk in the bad column is the lack of group play in terms of this. So the way that this works is you pick what you want to do and you have a little plan, right? And you do your little plan and you go through, and you get it. Well, you can't really group up with other people while you're doing this. And this is objectively the best way to basically farm these zones, because you get these huge bonuses like EXP bonuses and Obel bonuses and Obducite bonuses, and like it's kind of crazy how much loot you get once you finish everything. But there's no reason to really do it in a group, because everybody's war activity is not going to be the same. There's no sync up between players. So you have even less of a reason to actually play with other players anymore. Almost at all. Unless your war plan syncs up with the other person's war plan. The runes are pretty much still the same as they were before. They did cut out a large number of the runes to make them fit inside this panel. They added fishing. I don't really necessarily think fishing is a good addition. It's just an addition. I wouldn't put it in the bad column, and I wouldn't put it in the good column either. It's just there. I freaking hate this thing, by the way. This thing. Dude, I ever since they changed this, I freaking hate this thing. And I know this is not a change specifically for Lord of Hatred, but God, I hate this thing. And then this thing. I hate this thing too. Going back to like them taking away your player agency, like this also like takes away the player agency as well. Like it pretty much just tells you what to do and when to do it. I mean, there's really no thought involved in playing the game outside of all the things that they're telling you to do. You do what's on here to get these massive bonuses. You do what's on here to get these massive bonuses. And now they've made it so that you have to do this. And I think this is something that we have to put in here, is that the season rewards have become mandatory. And you might be asking, well, how are they mandatory? Don't they just give you rewards? Well, they also give you skill points now. So if you want all of your skill points, if you want all of your Paragon points, you now have to do the season journey every single season. And the season journey is, of course, going to tell you exactly where to go. It's going to tell you what to do. It's going to tell you who to kill. You got to go craft a certain number of items or reach a certain number of gems crafted in your jeweler. I mean, I don't particularly like games that force me to do 1,000 things before I'm able to get, like basic stuff like this, like a laundry list, like a honeydew list, essentially of objectives. But I mean, that's where we're currently at. Do season 1 to get all your loot. Do the season 2 bonuses. Do your Season 3 bonuses. Make sure you do your Enclave of Darkness. Make sure you do your Den of the Apostate. Make sure you've done a certain number of war plans so you can get access to your Paragon points. And it's almost monotonous and tedious the way that they currently have it set up. It's like they think that the players who are playing the game have no brain in their head, and that the players require hand-holding 100% of the time to do everything. You basically have a quest, like campaign, that although the campaign was fun, it basically tells you where to go and what to do the entire way. And then you get to the end game, and there's a war plan that tells you where to go and what to do the entire way. And then there's a set that literally tells you what skills to use and how to get your damage reduction and how to get your damage bonus, which basically gives you an exact, like, criteria of how to play your character. And then to get your skill points and everything else, it literally goes through the process of telling you exactly what you need to do, who you need to kill, what you need to achieve, where you need to go to get to the next thing. And you're literally just stuck in an endless loop of what's my next objective? 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 Like, at a certain point, you start to realize that you're not really making any choices on your own of what you're doing. To get the bonuses, you do what they tell you to do. If you don't do what they tell you to do, you don't get the bonuses. You can play the game without doing what they tell you to do, I suppose. If you're okay with not having your Paragon points, if you're okay with not having your skill points, if you're okay with not getting, ridiculous amounts of loot, and if you're okay with not wearing the sets and so forth and so on, I guess you could play it just how you wanted to. And my bet is that if you did that, because of the way that they have the game currently structured, you'll get nowhere. Because all the bonuses and all the things, all the rewards come from essentially just doing what they tell you to do. Want your free mythic? Well, you're going to have to complete all 10 chapters of the season journey, all the way to the end. Want your free, like 3,200 Forgotten Souls and your enhanced primordial crafting materials? Well, you're going to have to do the whole season journey all the way to the end. And we're going to tell you exactly what you do. We're going to tell you exactly where to go. We're going to tell you exactly who to talk to. We're going to tell you exactly what to grind a certain number of times. Get to it, because, yeah. So eventually I got to the point where I got just bored out of my mind playing the Warlock, and I decided to switch over to one of the other characters. I spent a lot of time looking at all the other characters' skill trees because I really wanted to get an idea of how many other skill trees were interesting and fun to play with. And I basically just came to the conclusion that I just wasn't interested in any of the changes that they made to the skill tree. Nothing. With the exception of one. The only skill that I was actually interested in was this one, which was the Throwing Frenzy, which was actually kind of fun to play with for a little while. And I had more fun on the Throwing Frenzy barb than I did on my entire playthrough with the Warlock. And even then, like, I spent like maybe a couple hours on it, and I was already on, like, what did I get to on this character? Like Torment 7, Torment 8 or something? I can't remember. Let me see. Torment 5. I got to Torment 5 like within like an hour of playing. And I just got bored all over again. Yeah, I don't know what they did to this game. I don't know what is wrong. But I like to be constructive. And I like to not just say nasty things about a game and not give it some feedback as to like how they could potentially improve it. So let's make a segment here of how could we improve what they've done. Let's start with sets. The first thing that I would suggest with sets, and if you really want sets to not be this over-encompassing, overarching thing that takes over the entire game, they need to be reduced down to, at maximum, 3 pieces. There should not be a single set that is more than 3 pieces, ever. That is the first thing that you should do, and honestly, the most important thing that you should do. There should never be a set in any game that is more than 3 pieces. Anything more than 3 pieces, and you are leading into the territory of this set is taking over your entire character and basically controlling everything that you're doing. The skill tree. You need something else to invest in besides the skills. Like, I know you took away the passives, and you took away the passives because you didn't want people investing in things, but, like, maybe you could at least invest in these things here or something. Beefing these up. Because as it is right now, with the amount of skill points that you've given the players and the way that you currently have this set up, most of the players will not have enough points or enough abilities to spend their points on. On top of that, like, because you have us limited to 6 skills, you basically prevent us from being able to spend those into other abilities. And one of the things that I ended up doing was using runes and spending points into the abilities for the runes because it was the only way I could get an additional cast. I don't know what it is specifically that you did to this skill tree that makes it so unfun, but it's terrible. And I don't know exactly how you can fix it. In fact, I think that this skill tree is just a straight up downgrade over the previous skill tree in almost every way. It's less fun to engage in. There's less tension involved in choosing your abilities, which makes it less fun when you go out into the battlefield and actually use those abilities because you get to find out the fruits of your labor. You don't have to put any brain power into this skill tree, like, at all. So there's no fun in coming up with builds. You pretty much just max out the skill and choose your things and move on. I don't know how you can fix this. The only thing I can even suggest is being able to invest skill points into these end abilities or something. I just don't know. Another thing is this war plans.
Chart the course.
This war plans needs to be far more of a build your own journey than what you have here. Like, if I want to do 7 boss runs in a row, then let me do 7 boss runs in a row. If I want to do, like 10 pit runs in a row, then let me do 10 pit runs in a row. The way that you currently have it set up basically forces you to do content that you're not interested in doing, and also at the same time makes you feel bad for going and doing the content that you would actually be interested in doing. Like, for instance, right now there's no pits on this list. And what if I just want to grind out my glyphs? So if I go grind out my glyphs, then I'm basically just null and void here. Of course, I could always just hit new plan over and over again and spend some of my doojanks to just try and get one that has pits on it. But I just don't understand why it's so restrictive in what you're doing here. I feel like this side over here is kind of neat, but I don't want to have to do this to get to this. This is shit, and this is fun. Why am I being forced to do this crap? And this is an example of what I'm talking about, where they give you like 2 options and one is just obviously superior. What if you wanted to do Helltide, right? Well, Helltide doesn't give you a good reward. It's only a small amount of spoils and 43 activity experience. Whereas over here, the rare war plan, Conquer a Nightmare Dungeon, is a large amount of experience, and it gives you a better reward. They do this all over the place, where literally they will have 2 options, and one of them is just obviously the superior option. And in fact, if you just want massive amounts of loot, experience, and obducite, and a bunch of other stuff, you pretty much just ignore anything that's not like a yellow or higher on this. So you just grab all the yellows, or if the blue is the highest, you grab the blue, and you just grab all the really high ones, and you just, at the end, you always end up with a crap ton of loot and crazy things that pop out of the chest. I don't. I don't know. I don't see myself playing this like much at all. And I know, I didn't exactly go into this season with the most cheerful outlook, but I gave it a try. I didn't expect them to have changed the game to the point where it has completely lost me. I mean, the reasons why I stopped playing the game before were my own reasons, and I just whatever. But now it just feels like whatever magic the game has had is gone. The magic's gone. Whatever magic was here just isn't here anymore. And Diablo 3 Resurrected is born. If you enjoy Diablo 3, if Diablo 3 is one of your favorite games, then you're going to be tickled pink, I feel like. I feel like this is literally Diablo 3 Resurrected. There's not much about this game that isn't just Diablo 3 at this point. I don't know. I think that's pretty much it. I don't really have a lot more to say about this. As always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe button if you enjoy the content. And as always, keep watching.